Ladies and gentlemen, what happens when a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader, he publicly tells America's allies not to trust Washington? Well, you get a statement that sends shockwaves across West Asia. And that is exactly what kind of happened this week. Mohsen Razi, one of Iran's most influential political figures and a long-time figure within Iran's security establishment, delivered some of the strongest warning heard since the tension escalated. Well, his message, it was directed at America's Gulf partners, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and others too. According to him, countries that supported Israel should not assume that the U.S. will always protect them. Now, that statement alone, it attracted global attention because it directly challenges the security arrangements that have shaped the Gulf region for decades. But then came an even more controversial remark. He referenced sensitive territorial issues including Abu Dhabi and Kuwait, topics that government usually avoid discussing publicly, and suddenly what was already a tense regional atmosphere, that became even more uncomfortable. Why? Because territorial disputes, they are among the most sensitive issues in the international politics. Once they enter the public debate, emotions rise quickly and diplomatic relationships, they can become strained. In fact, he also claimed that if certain military actions had taken place inside Lebanon, Iran would have responded with overwhelming force. Now, whether that was a warning or maybe a prediction, that remains unclear, but one thing is certain. The language coming from Tehran this time, it is becoming increasingly aggressive. And the Gulf nations, they are paying very close attention here. Many of these countries host important American military facilities and play a very important role in global energy exports. Because in this region, words often carry strategic meaning. And yes, while political leaders exchange warning, another controversy is unfolding involving Kuwait, Iran, and the U.S. A controversy centered around a deadly airport attack. Well, first of all, here is America's biggest warning. 14 countries are now under travel alert. Can you imagine planning a vacation, booking your tickets, packing your bags, and then suddenly receiving a warning from your government saying, think again? Well, this is exactly what is happening right now. The US has issued one of its boldest travel advisories in recent months. In fact, covering 14 countries and territories across the West Asia. And it is not a routine advisory at all. This warning comes at a time when the whole region is witnessing rising military tension, growing fear of retaliation, and concern that a local conflict, it could quickly become a regional one. Here the US says that the security situation, it remains highly unpredictable. In simple words, nobody knows what could happen next. Countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, in fact Kuwait, Jordan, the UAE remain under a level 3 advisory. That means Americans are being told to reconsider travel. And in the meantime, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, and Yemen, these places are under the highest warning possible, level 4, do not travel. And what does that mean and why it matters so much? Because the travel advisories, they are not just about tourism. They reflect how governments assess the security risk and how seriously they view the possible threat on the ground. So when Washington is issuing a warning of this scale, it definitely signals growing concern about possible attacks, military escalation, disruption to transportation network, and threat to civilians. Airlines, businesses, and multinational companies, they often monitor these advisories very closely because they can actually affect operations and the employee travel. And there is another layer to this story. The whole West Asia sits at the heart of global energy market. Any instability there, it can send shockwaves across the world. In fact, oil prices, shipping routes, air travel and supply chain, all can be affected. Here, investors, they are already watching the whole region completely and very carefully because even a small escalation, it could create uncertainty in global market. For now, the message from Washington, it's simple. Be very careful because the whole region, it remains on the edge. Now, speaking of the rising tension, one of Iran's most powerful voices has now issued a warning that is creating headlines across the Gulf. So let's move to our next story.